we're very happy to welcome back Jennifer Frizzell and happy to welcome Christina Warriner, who are from the Reproductive Equity Now organization. We're going to talk about that, but I'm going to first start out the conversation with the news that the Republicans here in the state of New Hampshire have proposed a new law that would make abortion illegal after the 15th day. We're not talking weeks here, the 15th day of a woman's cycle. Now, when I heard this, I thought too, what? Obviously, someone was not paying attention in sex ed back in high school. So I don't know. Christina and Jennifer, what do you make of this, the news here in New Hampshire?
Yeah, thanks so much for having us, Kathy. I think this news, let's be blunt about it, it's a full abortion ban. 15 days, that's a full abortion ban. It's not aligned with what Granite Staters are for. There's broad support for reproductive freedom here. And I think it reminds us, unfortunately, that these threats are very present here in New Hampshire. This is what's on the ballot in 2024, and they've made that very clear. And so we're proud to be working with the coalition that's going to combat this, but let's not get complacent about it, and make sure that we hold these folks accountable in the next election.
Yeah, Jennifer, any comments from you about the latest news here in New Hampshire?
Well, certainly New Hampshire legislators are showing us exactly the path that they believe our policy should take.
Yeah. That is that mic working, Chris?
Yeah, I just had to put it up.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Not only does a woman not know if she's pregnant at 15 days, she probably isn't after 15 days. I mean, that's the absurdity of this latest thing coming from the New Hampshire Republicans. Okay, let's get back to your organization, Reproductive Equity Now. Tell us about your organization and what does it do and what are its goals and how does it achieve them? Christina?
Yeah. So my name is Christina and I'm our New Hampshire State Director. And we're a New England-based organization that works to make equitable access to full spectrum reproductive care a reality for all people, regardless of your zip code, your race, where you live, and what type of insurance that you have. I am really grateful to be our inaugural state director. We expanded into New Hampshire in September of this year, and also into Connecticut at the same time. And we see this as an important time to expand regional access to abortion care and all reproductive care when other parts of the country are broadly eliminating access. We see it as a time to make New England as a beacon for reproductive health care equity and abortion access. And we do that through advocacy, through education, and through activating communities to know where to get care and how to stand up for the care that they deserve. Jennifer, anything to add?
No, I think that it's important that we have an opportunity to be bringing more voices and more advocacy onto the landscape at this critical moment.
Jennifer, I'm going to interrupt because I don't hear the audio. So you know what we're going to do? I think we're going to share that mic. So we're going to kind of leave it up to you two to kind of move the mic back and forth, and that will, I think, solve that issue. Thanks. Go ahead, Jennifer. You were answering that question.
Well, I think now that I have the benefit of the mic that I know is working, I'll rewind and just say the arrival of Reproductive Equity Now really comes at a critical time for abortion advocacy on the landscape here in the years since the Dobbs decision has overturned Roe and taken away those federal protections. We've really seen a lot of chaos at the community level about people understanding what kind of care is available and what kind of policies might impact them coming from the federal level, coming from the state level. We've had a strong coalition of voices here, but with the pressure and the heat in the upcoming election and the critical opportunity to provide services now, Reproductive Equity Now has an opportunity to add and build on New Hampshire's commitment to this work.
So I understand that Reproductive Equity is a original organization throughout New England, and you're focused now on New Hampshire? Is that or are you focused on all of New England? Or
Yeah, so we were a Massachusetts organization that just expanded into both Connecticut and New Hampshire, with hopes to be across all of New England. We see we're the first regional model in the nation because we see state by state, community by community work as the way forward to win all of these fights. And so we are focused on New Hampshire. We're really happy to be here. I'm from here. I'm happy to be here. And I think, but we're also see it as a possibility to share resources, to see what's worked in other places, and to build a strong coalition. We're stronger together as a region when we work together across state lines. We know folks get healthcare across state lines every day. They travel for work across state lines every day to go to concerts, sports games. I don't know of a New Hampshire sports team that people go to often. We have to, we're very much proud of our region. And so it's time for us to be proud of our region for reproductive equity too.
Are you seeing women coming from other parts of the country, other states that have stricter rules? Or do you see them actually coming to New England?
Yeah, we are very close partners with actually your independent reproductive and sexual health care provider, Lovering Health Center, that's right in Greenland. And both they and Equality Health Center and Planned Parenthood of Northern New England have seen folks, especially as more people come to Massachusetts to receive care because of the beacon that they pose themselves to be in the nation. There's been overflow from even wait times are longer there. So folks sometimes from Northern Massachusetts are coming up to New Hampshire, from Maine are coming to New Hampshire. And then, yes, they have let us know that they've had folks travel from, taking plane rides to get here as well.
Yeah, undue burden is what it seems to me. Yeah.
One of the other things I wanted to highlight about the regional model of Reproductive Equity Now is it gives us the chance to look at those states in New England that really are leading the way. And Massachusetts and Vermont, through legislative and constitutional action, have been among the states in the country who are showing us what abortion advocacy and what a region that wants to be a destination for not only its own citizens, but for those in our country who are without these rights. And we want to make sure that New Hampshire is not falling behind across the region as our peer states are taking us to a place where rights and access are strongly protected. And New Hampshire has historically, I've been doing this work for decades, been a state with some of the strongest support for reproductive freedom in the country. And right now we do not have elected officials and we do not have policies that match the views of our citizens. And we need democracy to get to work for us. And so we can bring those voices and those citizens to the policymaking.
Governor Sununu, as we know, signed a budget bill with an abortion ban in it, the last budget. And my question is, what if things change in 2024? And there are good chances that our next governor will be a woman.
That's a pretty good chance.
That's a pretty good chance. And can this be changed? Can this be rectified? Can this be reevaluated? This abortion ban?
Yes, and we hope that it is, but we know that this is also something that goes across both the executive and legislative branches of government. Unfortunately, here in New Hampshire, you may have seen across the country that citizens can bring forth their own constitutional amendments to say, this is what we want, and this is what we believe, and we're putting in our own hands. In New Hampshire, legislators have to introduce those things. So to really affirm, not only just overturn the ban, but then affirm people's access to this. We need our legislature to align with us. We also need executive counselors who are going to fund things like sexual and reproductive health care. And then, yes, we need a governor who's going to advocate for that and an attorney general who's going to protect us from national attacks. So it's across the board. Every election matters. And we know that even if a woman is our governor, it doesn't mean that she is going to support our rights. So let's not confuse that either. Let's make sure we're we're holding all the candidates to the highest standard.
You are correct. We've seen this now just most recently in Kentucky, a very red state, that when it had a chance to codify or to enshrine reproductive rights in its constitution, it stepped up with a healthy majority to do just that. And unfortunately, as you say, it's not that easy in New Hampshire. Last week we had Colin Van Osten here on the show, and after he left, I thought, I want to ask him something. So I emailed him and said, can we do something here in New Hampshire the way Kentucky just did, Ohio? And he said, yeah, it's not that easy. You have to go through the legislature and with a huge majority, with like 60%. And then it has to go to I think we could get 2/3 of the state to, in a referendum, but it's not that easy in New Hampshire. You're right, Christina. It comes right down to democracy and how we vote. And, we have to keep that, all women and all men to have to keep that in mind. Yeah. When they vote. Jennifer?
Well, I wanted to say something about Kentucky and what's really, happening across the country in some of these votes and referendum, which is the real importance of women coming forward and telling their stories and really being honest, sometimes having to invade their own privacy in order to do it, but making sure that their neighbors, their members of their community, voters in their state, and people across the country are aware of the hardships and the medical harm that is happening across the country to pregnant women, whether they are in states with extreme bans, and so they are their health is required to get to emergency conditions before they can get to care, or where they may or may not have the resources and the wherewithal to travel to another state. And so I think the movement is being fueled right now by the real human impact of these bans. And I'm grateful and inspired by the many women who are coming forward, whether it's in states like Kentucky or Ohio or in our own state, in our own communities, because very rarely when people see their own neighbors in need in complex pregnancy situations, do they not want that care to be available to them easily, conveniently, and without government interference. And that's what we're challenged by right here now in New Hampshire.
And thank goodness women are coming forward and telling their stories. And we've heard so many heartbreaking stories about women who were looking forward to giving birth, and then something happened, and it was a health issue, and then they weren't allowed to be treated. It's appalling to me that women are denied health care. Just because of, often these beating heart bills and stuff like that. I just read a story about a woman whose fetus was diagnosed with trisomy 18, which is deadly. And if the fetus makes it to childbirth, then the chances of it living only a couple hours is what's expected. And she wasn't able to do anything about that and to prevent any the damage that would happen to her if this baby was full term. So it's just there's so many stories out there now.
And that's why I think our organization is called Reproductive Equity Now, because we can't wait to ensure that people have these choices, and that we deeply believe in our mission indicates that everyone has the right to choose if, when, and how they become a parent. And they also deserve all of the resources to make those decisions, including access to high quality maternity care, child care, if they choose to become a parent. There are so many challenges, and it's so personal to each person when they decide to make that decision. And we need to trust women and people who give birth that they know what's right for them, rather than having politicians say that they have a better understanding of what we need as people.
I don't think men would ever allow the government to tell them what kind of medical care they can have or not. That is something that I'm sure every man takes for granted, that he can make that decision after speaking with his physician. But we women have to jump through a lot of hoops before we can even make decisions that are private health decisions. It doesn't seem quite fair. I went to your website and noticed you had something called a New England Abortion Care Guide. And I thought that was really important for people because sometimes some of these women's clinics are misleading. So tell us about the guide.
Yeah, so we launched that to make sure that folks know that when they need an appointment, not only can they find a place that's safe to go to, but also it answers questions about, any questions you might have before you're encountering that care that you're going to get fact-based information about what to ask before an appointment, what to expect. And then, yes, to what you're saying, there are a lot of anti-abortion centers, which often are also referred to as crisis pregnancy centers, all across the nation and all across New England and all across New Hampshire. There's some right here in the Seacoast that do pose themselves as clinics there to help women in times of a crisis pregnancy or a pregnancy that might be something that's causing stress in their life, and they don't have the resources or support perhaps to talk to folks in their network to get support. So they go to these centers to get trusted care, and are often misled with misinformation, encouraged to delay care, sometimes told lies about where they are in their pregnancy, and promised a lot of other benefits like free diapers and things to encourage them to come back for support. It's misleading. It's often deceptive, and it's caused really harmful outcomes for a lot of folks. We just saw in Worcester, Massachusetts, that someone who went to a anti-abortion center was not diagnosed as an ectopic pregnancy after getting a ultrasound there, and a few weeks later had a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. My own mother experienced that before giving birth to me. It's absolutely life-altering. It's really dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
And it shows their lack of medical knowledge, and their lack of care for the person carrying or who has a pregnancy and who is, who needs to be given the right care for them. And so we're supporting them in taking action and investigating and sharing more about what's happening. And we need to educate every person about the dangers that those pose.
I've heard those stories about women being lied to about where they are, how pregnant they are, how far along they are, just to prevent them from finding the care and the health care they need. Where are we? What's the situation with the other states in New England? Is it codified into the state constitutions? Yeah, it's a little creaky. There you go.
New Hampshire currently is an outlier among the New England states with regard to not having any active protections in our law or in our constitution that specifically affirm a right to reproductive freedom or a right to abortion access without government interference. How the other New England states have gotten there is a mix of processes depending on kind of what democracy and what the framework of each of those states allows or enables. And so we have seen in the last year or two ambitious legislative action in Massachusetts and in Vermont, not only to protect reproductive freedom, but also to protect providers and patients who want to be providing that care to out-of-state patients. In New Hampshire, we have no such protections. We don't have statutory protections, or we do not have named constitutional protections. And those, the absence of those, leave us and leave pregnant people in this state much less protected in the case of the upcoming elections and how quickly things could set back. And also just in order to ensure going forward that providers will invest in our state, that we'll be able to make sure modern ways of delivering care like telehealth and other forms of reaching rural patients, we can't get that kind of investment in access unless we're a state that protects the underlying right. And so It's important for New Hampshire residents and citizens who care about their reproductive freedom to know that they need to be calling on their elected officials, executive and legislatively, in the year ahead to bring New Hampshire's policies and protections in line with what our people are hoping for, and also what the rest of the New England states are currently allowing, because New Hampshire sees itself, New Hampshire people expect to have access and have been that way. And it's only in recent years where we've had legislative and some strong reproductive attacks that we've started to fall behind the region.
Talking about, pregnant people coming to New England for reproductive health care. The follow-up question to that is inevitably, there are some states that are preventing pregnant people from traveling.
I believe just Idaho, correct?
Idaho is the only one. Idaho has now passed a bill that you cannot leave the state if you are pregnant. Is that the case?
I believe that is what they've tried to enact. We assume that will be challenged, because then all healthcare, can you cross any state border? Can you go anywhere to receive the healthcare you need? I'm sure folks listening to this call have gone to Mass General or to places for specialty care. I know my family has, right? So it creates so many more complications, and again shows the absolute just incredible decision of these folks to think that they can regulate where we receive the healthcare that we need, and that we don't know what we need, and that we can't take it into our own hands to make those decisions for ourselves.
Yeah.
I think what laws like that Christina is describing show is the attempt to intimidate people who are even in any way friends, family members of pregnant people seeking abortion. So it's not just the patient themselves that would be challenged to navigate a system of restrictions and limitations, but it would be family members would question, am I going to have some type of criminal or civil liability if I drive you across state lines to get that abortion? If I help raise funds through a community abortion fund that helps subsidize the costs of folks in need, aggressive attorney generals in states like Texas and some of the other states are promising civil liability for providers across the country in other states who are helping patients from Texas. So part of these attacks on preventing care is also intended to limit or question the ability of people who love and care for pregnant people to help them in this process.
It just sounds like intimidation, just keeping people afraid of consequences. And one of our executive council here in New Hampshire, which is a 5-person body that gives its okay to financial issues of the state. It has voted now. I think this is the 5th time to direct funding, and I believe that your organization, Reproductive Equity Now, has a petition about this. Can you tell us about the petition and about the Executive Council decision?
Yeah, of course. So you're correct that the Executive Council is a 5-person elected body that advises the governor. Not only do they approve contracts for over $10,000, which I would say are most contracts, but they also approve appointments and judges. For a long time, they have approved funds that go towards family planning, which that includes pregnancy tests, sexual transmitted disease tests and treatment, access to, the things that we all need, like annual exams and total family planning, and talking about when and if we want to become pregnant. And as things have become more polarized, the 3 abortion providers in this state who received those funds, so Lovering Health Center, Equality Health Center, and Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, have been denied these funds. It has been proven time and time again that these funds do not go to providing abortion, which would go against federal and state law. But because many of our executive counselors are anti-abortion, We don't know if this is punishment or lack of information and knowledge, but they deny these funds. And so, yes, you're correct that this is the 5th time that they've done so in the last 2 or so years. And this is hitting people who are from low-income communities, our most marginalized folks, for not being able to access the family planning that they need. Do I, as someone who has private insurance, deserve to have birth control more than someone else? No. And it's directly hurting those folks. And it's important to state that our executive counselor right here, Janet Stevens, has voted against those funds 5 times. And against the interests of perhaps her most marginalized residents. And so we need to understand the tie between our executive council and our access to reproductive health care and sexual health care, and stand with our clinics, especially Lovering and the Equality Health Center, whose budgets have been decimated by this lack of funding, where they can't provide the many services that they do to our communities.
Yeah, let's be honest. This is a socioeconomic issue too. This affects folks who do not have the ability to afford health care and health insurance, and so this is it's completely. And I appreciate the word equity in your name, because that plays a huge part of access to abortion care.
And if you don't mind, I do just want to add too that this lack of funding has limited the ability for our 2 independent clinics to do outreach to the communities that they want to serve. So I've heard that they have their everyday staff going on weekends to fairs and things where they know that LGBTQ folks or folks who may be underinsured or who may need to learn more about their sexual and reproductive health care will be. They used to be able to afford to have full-time staff folks or people that were funded to do that work and to be meeting communities where they're at. And that is lacking now. And so it's really unfortunate. And I just want to make that clear as well, that it's really, really hurting those communities. And it's not what we stand for.
Jennifer.
One of the things I'll pick up on that Christina mentioned earlier is really important for the community to understand the link between attacks across all forms of reproductive care. So oftentimes we'll hear Governor Sununu or others really trying to moderate their positions on these issues. And what they're not acknowledging is we have tremendous erosion going on at the preventative reproductive health care level. So we have the birth control, the counseling, the preconception planning that allows people to approach pregnancy in the most healthy way being attacked, defunded, eliminated. Then we have abortion being attacked, restricted, and abortion providers being subject to criminal penalties for providing complex abortion care, the type of criminal penalties that make people not want to come to New Hampshire and practice if they are highly skilled in the OBGYN and the neonatal area of medicine. And then, as you experienced here in the Seacoast, not so unrecently or recently, is we're beginning to see the closure of maternity and delivery units at some of our hospitals. These threads are connected. If we are not investing in robust reproductive and pregnancy care across the spectrum, if we're not a state where the top medical providers in this area of medicine want to come, then attacking the preventative care and attacking abortion has consequences across the medical system. And everyone in our community should be concerned about all of these areas of pregnancy care under attack.
Yeah, Christina.
Yeah, and I say this to most people I talk to as a 29-year-old who would love to have a family in this state and to live where my family is and to stay here. It's incredibly challenging to think about if maternity wards are closing right here in the Seacoast where I live. If I wouldn't have access to abortion care, if I had a complicated pregnancy, it's why are young people and families going to settle here when they can't get the care they need to have families if and when they want them?
We didn't even see all the repercussions of the Dobbs decision. I mean, this is a part of it too, is that we're losing physicians. Physicians don't want to practice here in states that have abortion bans. And so that leaves folks who are looking to start a family like yourself, kind of leaves them out in the cold. Where do you go? Where do you find maternity care? It has such such a broad-reaching effect that we had no idea. And I think this coming election, you mentioned the upcoming 2024 elections, and we should talk about that because it will definitely have an impact on this issue. So how do we make sure that the people we elect will protect our abortion rights?
How do we make sure that they do? Well, first, I think that's part of our mission, as I think we're excited to do a lot of education around this. Everything we've just talked about right now, you mentioned, I think sometimes people don't, make the links between democracy and access to reproductive care, but also the links that Jennifer made between across our reproductive lives, whether that's maternity care or access to care that's preventive and knowing and understanding our sexual and reproductive health needs. And so we need to talk about that. We need to say abortion. We need to educate people from the municipal to the legislative to the executive level on how they can be reproductive champions. There are so many ways that we can stand up for that in our communities. We're excited as an organization in 2024 to be building strong communities of support around our two independent providers. There are only two independent providers in New Hampshire, Equality Health Center and Levering Health Center. And they've been providing community care for 50 years or nearly 50 years. They're formerly the Feminist Health Center, if anyone is familiar with that. And they meet people where they're at. They provide people with what they need, and we need to stand up for them. We know that threats across the state or across the country are really worrisome, but we want to make sure we're looking at our own backyards and thinking, can I be donating to my local health center? Can I be supporting them as a volunteer? What can I be doing at the State House that advocates for what they need across the spectrum of care that they provide? And so that's something that we're eager to do, as well as educating our elected officials and public on the dangers of the anti-abortion centers that we mentioned earlier as well. We want to make sure that no city funding is going to those, no state funding ends up going to those. We need to make sure that we're funding people who provide comprehensive, compassionate care and not those who are deceiving women and people who need sexual and reproductive health care.
Does Reproductive Equity Now, does it provide funding? Do you ask for donations? Do you fundraise for this?
Yeah. We are really grateful to be funded by foundations and private donors, as well as everyday donors who are interested in investing in reproductive equity in their community. One thing that we are grateful for as this entity is that we are able to take strong stances as a non-provider voice as well. So unfortunately, we've seen people sometimes maybe, get retribution for taking stances because they also need to rely on those state funds. Our friends who provide care at the independent clinics, at Planned Parenthood, they rely on that funding and they rely on those relationships. And we're also looking to build deep relationships with electeds, but we're also willing to, at times, perhaps hold them, accountable in ways that we feel comfortable doing because we have a strong supporters behind us who want us to be spreading our message and educating these folks.
You said that what we need to say the word abortion, and that is something I felt strongly about too, because we've been awfully coy at times, trying to talk around the reproductive health. But yes, we are talking about access to abortion, safe, legal abortion as a choice for pregnant people to make. So, is there some kind of a platform for people who want to talk about their own personal stories?
Yeah, we're really interested in moving into a storytelling space, and we're just in conversations about that yesterday. I'd love to highlight that when we did our petition in support of the 2 independent clinics, that we received almost 100 stories from folks who receive care there and what their independent clinic means to them and has meant to them over time. If you go to our Instagram, Repro Equity Now, you can see some of those stories. Folks saying that their husband is a OR nurse who had an HIV exposure and was able to go to a quality health center and get a test. Folks saying that they've never received more compassionate and inclusive care than when they went to the Lovering Health Center. They'd been through some trauma in their life and had never felt more cared for and didn't realize what they were missing until they went there. So those stories are incredibly powerful. And as Jennifer was alluding to earlier about people who have spoken up about their abortion stories, and as well as just what they need for sexual and reproductive health care, we need to continue to do that in New Hampshire, and we're looking forward to amplifying those voices in 2024.
I'm involved with a theater organization here in Portsmouth called the New Hampshire Theater Project, and we have come into possession of books that were available in the waiting room of a women's health care clinic, where women who were waiting to go in for their abortion wrote down their thoughts. These books are. We had an evening together with a number of women. We got together at someone's house and we passed around these books and we all took turns reading from them. It was a powerful, emotional moment to read the thoughts and situations of pregnant people who were in this situation and had made their decision. We're still trying to figure out if there is some kind of a theatrical production that we can kind of create using these books.
It reminds me of the vagina monologues.
Very much. These are statements from women in this situation, and there was certainly not a dry eye in that room reading these stories. Yes, and as I said, we're still trying to figure out if anyone in your organization has a great idea or how we could use these books, because it's such a powerful statement.
Yeah, thank you. I used to do a cappella, but I don't think that I'm still in my theater chops, but I'll talk to my boss.
All right. Wonderful. How afraid should we be that the contraception will become an issue or is an issue, or what is the situation you think in New England or as far as the country is concerned about contraception?
Well, there are a lot of attacks on contraceptive underway because we know the folks that are driving anti-abortion policy are really not going to stop there, but they are for taking away lots of tools of autonomy and destiny for women and pregnant people. But we also see, just like the contracts that were recently explained in the conversation of cutting off access to contraception at our facilities in New Hampshire that provide income-sensitive care, we also see federal legal attacks on access to contraception that could trickle down to New Hampshire, like attacks on minors being able to receive contraception at health clinics that are funded with federal dollars, minors who may be in situations who can't engage their parents in discussions about their reproductive and sexual health and how critically important it is for them to be able to receive those services in a confidential way. Those are attacks that are happening nationally that could easily trickle down and impact care in New Hampshire. And so people should understand the agenda of those who are undermining our reproductive rights while recognizing we're lucky that our health centers here in New Hampshire are working hard to keep the doors open for these full ranges of care at the same time that we fight these challenges.
What other issues along with these, with abortion care, do you have, or are you tackling? I mean, I see you've got all kinds of information about. So I'd love to know what kind of information you brought along for us. Beyond my questions, but what other information you have brought?
Yeah, I think Jennifer did touch on the maternity care issues as well. And I think that's something that we are grateful to be partnering with in other states. There have been commissions on Black maternal mortality. And we want to make sure, while we know our state may not be as diverse racially as a few other states, we still know that people are experiencing different maternal outcomes based off of insurance, based off of the color of their skin, based off of perhaps the zip code that they live in. And we want to make sure that that is also something we talk about. We know that insurance doesn't always cover doula care or midwifery care, and that's something that people deserve access to. There are incredible doulas right here in the Seacoast who are partnering with Wentworth Douglas Hospital in Dover, but insurance doesn't, cover what they're able to provide for folks. And so if we're talking again about preventative care or best outcomes for people who choose to be pregnant, we need to make sure that we're also standing with our values there and providing that care. And so we're excited to lean into that space as well. And find ways to provide folks who are interested in becoming parents with the best possible outcomes. And then, of course, we can't not talk about childcare when it comes to that. We're grateful to friends of ours like Senator Becky Whitley, who passed the Momnibus bill last year, and hope to see that implemented in a way that it supports more people to have what they need. I don't think anyone needs me to explain to them how hard being a parent is. I'm not one yet, but it's incredibly expensive and it's incredibly personal, the choices that you make about that. And so more choices for everyone here in New Hampshire is better. And not just those of us who have affluence should have choice. Everyone deserves choice.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. A couple of things. Doula?
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
A doula. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Doula, I believe is the spelling. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I know the correct definition, but doulas are kind of medically and therapeutically trained professionals who work with pregnant women, pregnant people during the course of their pregnancy, around a lot of self-care and kind of complementary ways of preparing to have a birth that both is healthy and appropriate for your medical condition and that fulfills the way that you want a birthing experience to happen with the right amount of familial or medical support in this environment. And the involvement of doulas as medical, quasi-medical counseling professionals has really been shown to increase the quality of care and the medical outcomes, especially for vulnerable populations. And doulas also help work with new moms in the earliest days of caring for an infant. And the investment in doulas has been shown both in the healthcare system and in the family development system to help bridge some of those inequities, as well as to give women much more positive pregnancy experiences.
Okay.
And I'll just add to that, I think some folks, depending on the culture they're from or where they originate from, they may want different types of birthing experiences, or they might expect something different because of what they've grown up around culturally. It's important to give people the birthing experience they want. And some may say that currently our birthing experiences are over medicalized or very, sanitary, kind of not a welcoming, calming experience. And so we want to give people those opportunities. And as Jennifer highlighted, study after study shows the beneficial outcomes that come from that.
Yeah. A doula is not a doctor or a midwife or a nurse, but they are schooled in what in helping and assisting and I think making people feel comfortable, and talking about women of color. It's amazing to me that someone as wealthy and well known and famous as Serena Williams had a very difficult and life-threatening a birth experience. I mean, and of course, she's not the only woman who has gone through this.
Yeah, and I, of course, speak to this as someone who can't understand that experience as a white woman, but do see that goes back to that trust piece. As do we have doctors who trust what their patients are telling them? Do we have patients who trust their doctors to care for them? And so we want to increase that trust. And do we have politicians who trust that folks know what they need as well in medical settings? So increasing those communications, increasing leaders in the doula community, leaders across reproductive healthcare, being in conversation with our politicians. We're hoping to bridge those gaps as well, so that people are making really informed decisions about what legislation they're bringing forth, and again, that we're building more trust rather than eroding it.
Yes, I wanted to mention, you mentioned State Senator Becky Whitley. She will be a guest on our show on Thursday, January 4th. We had her on several years ago when she was with the Moms Air Force, which was an environmental group. And so she has this, or had the mama bus. What is it called?
Momnibus.
Momnibus.
Okay. I love it. That's wonderful.
Oh, and we're also going to talk to her about the Cannabis Commission that she was on. So that's Thursday, January 4th, 9 a.m. Okay.
Well, I'll take that chance to just promote the importance of the Momnibus bill. This is a bill that Senator Whitney led, but many who care about maternal health outcomes came together to support. Thankfully, it includes a provision that extends postpartum Medicaid healthcare coverage for pregnant folks beyond 60 days. Previously, New Hampshire had one of the smallest windows of postpartum care, and where the federal government was encouraging and allowing up to 1 year of postpartum coverage. So Senator Whitney's Momnibus bill that passed last year with bipartisan support will shift New Hampshire to providing 1 year of care. It also provides resources for doula reimbursement, especially for vulnerable Medicaid folks who might not have access to those kinds of supportive caregivers as part of their pregnancy experience. It also begins to look at home visiting as a way to have early intervention with new families that have the most risky circumstances or the most need for health and social supports in those early days. So really, the Momnibus is a way for us to provide the kind of resources for vulnerable new parents to help bring infants home and get them off to a great start. And I'm glad you'll be talking about it with your audience.
Yeah, there's so many issues involved in this, and you bring up the whole area of postpartum, and that's, of course, a huge piece of this puzzle too, and should not be ignored. And that is also something that your organization advocates for, as postpartum care, and not just physical, but also mental as well. Yeah. Yes. What else did you bring for us? Any other issues that we haven't discussed yet?
Well, I think we've discussed several ways that Reproductive Equity Now's lens looks at equity issues, but we haven't really mentioned the importance of rural access in New Hampshire. And while Reproductive Equity Now is starting with some work, Christina is focused on supporting our independent providers, which is the Seacoast region and the Capital Area region. There's a real recognition, especially looking at a New England model, that so many folks in New Hampshire need to be looking at reproductive and abortion care available in a rural environment. And is that more investment in telehealth? Is that more coordination across states so that the use of medication abortion and the use of other services and delivery mechanisms can reach those patients who don't have a bricks and mortar location near them? Because across the 6 New England states, we have many, many people in need of care who aren't going to be able to just turn to one of our centers. And we need to be looking, and Reproductive Equity Now will be looking going forward into what are the policies and the community impacts that will help improve access in the rural areas.
But what's the situation with midwives now? I don't know. It's almost like an old-fashioned term. I don't know. Are women, or rather, I should say, are medical professionals still being trained as midwives?
I know that just over at Lovering, they have 2 registered nurses who are also, I believe, registered in nurse midwifery care. I apologize for not being maybe the best person for you to ask about this. But yes, I think, again, it shows another level of care, another level of trauma-informed care, another level of making sure that birthing experiences are right for all folks.
And then I would also add to that, it's critically important to have reimbursement mechanisms that make those forms of care available, because the types of birthing centers and the types of birthing experiences that midwives and doulas and alternate or complementary providers provide are those that have been some of the first to close in recent years and some of the most difficult to keep funding unless we have more of a commitment in our state and in our healthcare system to providing that kind of care.
Larry, I want to turn to you here because I really kind of get to, I would like to touch on the political piece of this puzzle and electing people, because as we discussed, it's so much about our democracy that will give us the access to abortion. I mean, can you say something to how we choose, how we go about choosing the right people to access?
Well, to me, it's pretty simple. If you want, reproductive rights and all the enlightened stuff, vote for Democrats. If you want the opposite, vote for the Republicans.
Okay, that was clear. It seems that way. I mean, we have to really ask the hard questions, but it seems that this has become such a partisan issue, and it's a shame. It didn't always used to be this way.
It did not. It definitely did not. And I think we've seen as the country has become more polarized. We used to have many pro-reproductive right Republicans in this state who sat on the Reproductive Rights Caucus in our state house. Jennifer remembers it well. And now, we see folks who are Republicans who may want to be pro-choice, pro-repro, be primaried out by their own party. It's not in their interest anymore. And it's very against our live free or die mentality. So, it's unfortunate that it's that way. But it doesn't seem to be changing. So I would agree with you that yes, we do see Democrats mostly aligned with being reproductive rights champions, but we also can always be calling on them to stand firm in that. We know it's popular right now to support abortion access, and I don't think any of us ever thought that we'd be here, but it's great to see, right? And we want to make sure that people aren't following that tide, but leading that tide, taking bold steps to whether they are a city councilor, whether they're a mayor, whether they're in the legislature. What can you be doing to tell your community we stand with your self-determination, and we are going to take steps that protect you in making the decisions that are right for you. So yes, consider voting for Democrats, but also ask them to really step up. Ask them what they're going to do and how they're going to be innovative in this post-Dobbs time, which none of us know how to navigate and are figuring out every day.
We never thought this would happen. We're still dealing with the fallout. We're dealing with new revelations every day of what this means for our lives, and not just access to abortion, but health care and contraception and so many other things. This has become the number one topic, and we see it in appearing in special elections all over this country. And that what amazes me, that doesn't affect it doesn't change the Republicans' views on this. You'd think they would see the writing on the wall.
I'm keeping an eye on the time, but I think that this is something that's really important. Well, to people on both sides, people feel very strongly, and that's life.
Well, I want to thank both of you for the work you do. It's really important, and we appreciate everything you do.
Really.
Jennifer Frizzell and Christina Warriner from the Reproductive Equity Now organization, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's good to be here.
Thank you.